everyone, it's Wednesday and you're watching Within the Frame. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. As this is the last week of 2023, Within the Frame is wrapping up the year, sharing details of what happened under a different topic each day. Today, we'd like to focus on North Korea. As North Korean leader Kim Jong-un pointed out, 2023 was a year of change as Pyongyang considers itself to have improved national power by successfully launching a spy satellite and solid-fuel ICBMs. It was also a year to remember as a clear alignment between North Korea and Russia was shown through the Vostochny summit between Kim and Putin. How are tensions on the peninsula forecast to develop next year, and what were other major issues related to North Korea? For this, we invite Doctor Go Myong-hyun, a senior fellow from the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. Dr. Go, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And we also have Evans Revere, a non-resident senior fellow of the Brookings Institution. Mr. Revere was also the former acting assistant secretary of state. Good to have you with us again, Mr. Revere.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, first question to our Dr. Go. So, North Korea launched solid-fuel ICBMs 3 times this year. Though it is believed that flight capability has been demonstrated, the atmospheric re-entry technology is yet to be verified. Could you tell us more about ICBM's capabilities?
So clearly the North Koreans have yet to demonstrate that they have a re-entry capability. And, but then the reason why North Korea hasn't been able to achieve the so-called the last phase of ICBM development could be because North Korea has obtained access to the key materials that could survive very extreme conditions that the range vehicles are subject to. So for instance, when the range vehicle on the ICBM falls back onto Earth, the temperature that this range vehicle is subject to can reach up to 3,800 degrees. So that's a temperature point where typical metal alloys can melt. So essentially, North Korea has to create or have access to materials that can survive such extreme conditions. And for instance, North Korea probably only required to have composite materials, for instance, carbon fiber. And these are materials that are subject to sanctions. So I think it could be because North Korea hasn't had access to such a material that hasn't been able to demonstrate the re-entry capability for which ICBMs. But even if North Korea obtains such materials and is able to perfect the technology, there's another hurdle yet. So if North Korea has to launch an ICBM across the Pacific Ocean towards the continental United States, it wouldn't suffice to have just one single warhead. North Korea would better, mathematically and economically speaking, would benefit from having multiple warheads in a single ICBM because a single ICBM can be targeted by the missile defense systems and so forth. So it's, in order to ensure that at least one warhead reaches the continental United States, the single ICBM should carry multiple warheads. This technology is called multiple independently targetable range vehicle, or MIRV. And then it's a very complicated and sophisticated technology. So even if North Korea achieves the re-entry technology, in order to essentially make their ICBM capability credible to the United States and South Korea and the international community, you will also have to achieve the MIRV technology. And it's unclear whether North Korea can achieve that technology anytime soon, even though the Kim Jong-un back in 2021 at the 8th Party Congress included MIRV as a part of their the North Korea's weapons development roadmap. So it's possible that the series of tests that we have witnessed this year is in fact a part of North Korea's technological development roadmap that is testing range technology as well as perhaps MIRV technology as well.
All right, so it is yet to fully achieve the ICBM capabilities it's expecting to do. All right. Now, Mr. Revere, ICBM was one thing, and another major achievement North Korea made was actually putting a military spy satellite into orbit after 2 failed attempts in May and August. During its key year-end meeting of the ruling Workers' Party, which has already started, Pyongyang is expected to decide on a further launch for next year. How did you see this year's satellite launch, and what's your forecast for such a launch next year?
Well, first of all, the North Koreans, in putting that satellite into orbit, did several things. Number one, it demonstrated yet again that it has the booster rocket capability to not only deliver potentially deliver nuclear weapons over long distances, and that booster rocket technology was demonstrated yet again in this launch. It's very similar to the booster rockets that would be used in a nuclear attack. At the same time, the North Koreans not only demonstrated that, but they demonstrated that they've overcome a serious problem that they've been having, which is the stage separation, the ability of one stage of the missile to separate from the others, and then to have the engines engage in that second stage, and then another stage that would be necessary either to put an object into space or possibly deliver a single or multiple nuclear warhead. So they demonstrated now that they've overcome that problem that they've been having with stage separation. And just to underscore the point, if you're going to deliver nuclear weapons over long distances, you'd better make sure that you have that stage separation technology working perfectly. It's going to be essential. And they demonstrated that at least that aspect of this technology, if not mastered, has achieved a significant breakthrough. Perhaps with Russian help, but we don't know about that. The third thing, obviously, was the actual insertion into orbit of a reconnaissance satellite. And here, I'm skeptical, cautiously skeptical of what the North Koreans have actually accomplished. Having an operational reconnaissance satellite in orbit, taking pictures, transmitting those pictures back to Earth and having them analyzed depends on having a very sophisticated level of technology in terms of the photography aspect of that mission. The right lenses, the right focus, et cetera, et cetera. That is really difficult technology to master. And it's not clear to me yet that what the North Koreans have been able to achieve is a level of technology that gives them anything more than what they could get by just commercially available satellite technology. The pictures that we've seen, or the alleged photographs that were taken, or descriptions of them, so far have not proved to me that the military utility of that reconnaissance satellite is what it needs to be if it's going to provide North Korea with the delicate, sensitive, focused information that it needs from a military reconnaissance satellite. So I think the jury is still out on whether the North Koreans have developed that aspect, that critical aspect of the technology that would really give them the insights, pardon the pun, into what's going on in the United States and Japan and the ROK in terms of on-the-ground developments there. So I think the jury is still out on that. But what we'll see, of course, I think in the coming months and the coming year are more satellite launches, more tests of the system, which will give the North Koreans an opportunity to move another step down the road. And we will see what they're able to develop in this very, very difficult area of satellite reconnaissance technology.
Right, we'll have to just wait and see what steps North Korea would make next year. Well, we have been talking about military provocations, and Dr. Go, in order to boost this leverage, many expect Pyongyang to further continue with provocations before Washington's presidential election takes place. That being said, how likely is a seventh nuclear test?
I think it's likely, much more likely than this year, obviously. And the reason is because there's a perfect timing for such a test taking place next year. You mentioned about the upcoming U.S. presidential elections, which increases the political uncertainty, and also the possible return of the former President Donald Trump to the White House, who had a very special relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Also, it makes it likelier for North Korea to somehow be tempted to raise its leverage over the international community to impose its de facto nuclear power state. So having said that, though, I think there are more important nuances there, which is that the role of China in this case. I think North Korea is concerned about the fact that the Chinese are trying to somehow stabilize its relationship with the United States. And this is problematic for North Korea because North Korea's geopolitical strategy in the last couple of years has been about aligning itself with China and Russia and then cutting off all types of dialogue with the United States and South Korea. And the overall framework of such approach was called the so-called return of the new Cold War to East Asia. And this is something that the North Korea like to mention over and over because by portraying itself as part of a grander confrontation between China, Russia on one hand, and the United States, Japan, South Korea on the other, North Korea's illicit nuclear development program is essentially portrayed as part of an ideological struggle between the authoritarian states and on the liberal democratic states on the other side. So therefore, you can minimize the impact or the negative impact of such illicit behavior. But then if China and the United States somehow make amends, I mean, it's unlikely that China and the United States will make amends, but at least they try to manage the tension in the region. That means that the situation in the region will be stabilized, and that means that China and South Korea will also improve their bilateral relations. And this is something that North Korea doesn't want to see. It contravenes its own narrative about new Cold War. So it knows that the red line provocations, such as a nuclear test, can provoke not just the Americans, the South Koreans, and the Japanese, but also the Chinese. So, and then also it puts the Chinese in a very difficult position, force them to take actions against the protective ally, which is North Korea. This is what happened back in 2015 and 16, and in the outcome of such a tension, and then the conundrum that Chinese faced back then was the closer, tightening relationship between Beijing and Pyongyang, rather than Beijing helping Washington to somehow sanction North Korea. So I think North Korea is probably having that in mind in this case for the upcoming year, so which raises a chance of such a provocation taking place, which in this case will be a nuclear test.
All right, I see. Thank you for your explanation, Dr. Go. Now, Mr. Revere, when it comes to diplomatic achievement, we cannot leave out North Korea and Russia's bolstered military cooperation following the summit between leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin. But with China distancing itself from the two, some say the alignment between North Korea, Russia, and China will not last long. What is your view?
It's obvious that the Russia-North Korea connection, this new Russia-North Korea connection, has the potential to greatly strengthen North Korea's military capabilities, its satellite launch capabilities, satellite navigation capabilities, materials development, aircraft avionics. You can name a dozen areas of military, nuclear, and missile technology that the Russians could be helpful in. At the same time, North Korea's provision of artillery shells to Russia is helping the Russians keep up their outrageous invasion of Ukraine. At the same time, the Chinese, I think, when they see that relationship between North Korea and Russia, and they see their own role in working with Russia and North Korea, they do see an advantage deriving from trilateral cooperation among these three partners, particularly in that by having North Korea able to increase its military pressure on the ROK, on Japan, on the United States, by strengthening North Korea's overall military capabilities, this creates greater security cooperation, greater security threat against the United States, against Japan, and against the Republic of Korea. And that, I think, the Chinese, generally speaking, see to their own advantage. But that is not to say that the Chinese, as you suggested in the question, are completely happy with the developments that they're witnessing here. Number one, the war in Ukraine, the illegal invasion of the Ukraine has put China, which is a partner of the Russians, in a very difficult position of having to defend and explain an invasion that they feel obviously uncomfortable with. At the same time, North Korea's development of additional capabilities has the potential to lead to instability on China's border in Northeast Asia, and that instability undermines a key objective of the Chinese, And it also undermines, quite frankly, China's desire to be seen as trying to improve relations, as Dr. Go said, not only with the United States, but also with Japan and the ROK. So there's good news and bad news in this trilateral partnership for the Chinese, and that's why you see the Chinese holding it at somewhat at arm's length. My sense is that the partnership will continue. We're not going to see this evolve into a full-blown military alliance with a whole series of detailed military exercises. But there is a tactical advantage that China sees by associating itself with these two countries, and that advantage derives from the fact that it makes the lives of American, South Korean, and Japanese strategists much more complicated, and that ultimately is to China's advantage.
All right, I see your point. Now, as our Mr. Revere already pointed out, Dr. Go, such an alignment, or should I say partnership, is going to continue. And against that, Seoul and Washington strengthened ties very much this year as they mark the 70th anniversary of their alliance. President Yoon and Biden even agreed on Washington Declaration. Could you tell us more about the details of this declaration and how significant was this?
No, I think it's also a very fundamental inflection point in the extended deterrence discussion that the South Korea and the United States have been having in the last decade or so in the backdrop of the increasing North Korean nuclear threat. So I think finally we switched the focus of the debate from one of deterrence to assurance. I think, we take the U.S. promise for extended deterrence for granted. We vaguely think that the United States will defend South Korea if South Korea is attacked with nuclear weapons, but then we don't really know how. And I think that was creating some concern in Seoul, that not only Washington obviously, but in Seoul, that this lack of details in the extended deterrence commitment created doubts in certain parts of community, the experts in Seoul, that the United States might not defend South Korea if North Korea, especially if North Korea acquires an capability such as an intercontinental ballistic missile that could target the mainland United States, which would really make a decision by the U.S. president to intervene in case of nuclear warfare in the Korean Peninsula. So I think finally, in this year's summit, through the Washington Declaration, that the two allies have agreed that there will be a much more extensive discussion about extended deterrence, more details, more promise, more capacitation on the part of South Korea to understand and implement the extended deterrence, and also the case of a nuclear warfare scenario in case of contingency in the Korean Peninsula. I think that was essentially materialized in the form of the Nuclear Consultative Group. So even before Nuclear Consultative Group, or NCG, came into being, the two countries had a mechanism of discussion for extended deterrence called the Extended Deterrence Strategy and Consultation Group, EDSCG. But then when the United States and South Korea agreed to put the term nuclear to such a discussion mechanism, he essentially is telegraphing to not just to South Korea, but to the wider international community that the United States is very serious about the North Korea's nuclear threat, and he also implies that the United States is really going to employ all the means in order to defend South Korea, including nuclear weapons. So, in fact, the term NCG has echoes of the nuclear sharing, because NCG is very similar to nuclear planning group that the NATO countries have with the United States, and NPG is part of the nuclear sharing mechanism that the United States has in place with the European allies. So with NCG, we don't really have that level of nuclear sharing or nuclear cooperation with the United States. But then I think as a placeholder, it's essentially the imagination is the limit. I think with NCG in place, we'll be filling that discussion group with more details and more actions as North Korea advances in nuclear threat. And I think we are already seeing this taking place, such as the TTX, or tabletop exercises, which is essentially a simulation of case North Korea uses nuclear weapons, and also as integrating nuclear use scenario into operational plans that involve South Korea and the U.S. forces in the Korean Peninsula. And I think these are step-by-step will increase South Korea's so-called nuclear intelligence, and that's what the Deputy National Security Advisor Kim Tae-yo mentioned after the second session of the NCG meeting took place last month. So with these steps, I think it makes not just the American commitment to extended deterrence more credible to the South Korean eyes, but also makes deterrence against North Korea stronger. Because now the U.S. promise of defending South Korea, including with nuclear weapons, is much more credible, and that assures the South Korean allies the deterrence itself becomes stronger, and really puts the North Koreans into a dilemma. They have developed so many nuclear weapons, but if South Korea is not doesn't fear North Korea's nuclear capability, so what's the point of developing nuclear weapons? I think we are entering the first phase of North Korea seriously considering negotiating their nuclear capability, because if they find out that nuclear capability is it really doesn't really matter, doesn't have an impact, then I think North Korea will finally think about negotiating this aspect of their nuclear capability.
All right, I see your point, Dr. Go. Now, Mr. Revere, not just Seoul-Washington ties, the thaw in Seoul-Tokyo relations helped fuel momentum for a three-way cooperation involving Washington as well. And the leaders of the three countries held the landmark Camp David summit in August. Could you tell us how meaningful this was?
In my view, this was one of the most significant diplomatic and strategic events that I've witnessed in Northeast Asia in many, many decades. This is something that American strategic thinkers, American political leaders, American diplomats have called for years, was a more intense, greater, full-blown cooperation among the United States and its two key East and Northeast Asian security partners. And to see how the ROK and Japan have been able to push past the many difficulties, historical and otherwise difficulties that they have between them, and to sit down and start talking about the shared interests that the two countries have, the shared threats that the two countries face, and the shared goals and values that they do have, and then to build on that and then work together with the United States and to build this partnership that is still emerging. It's got a long way to go, but it's really come a long way already. This is one of the most significant things that I, as somebody who's worked for many decades on U.S.-Korea relations, but also many decades on U.S.-Japan relations, this is something that has impressed me deeply, and I think it's one of the most pivotal security events that we have seen, and diplomatic events that we have seen in many, many decades. It has tremendous potential in the future, and at the same time, it is sending an extremely important signal, not only to North Korea, but to China and Russia and others who would seek to engage in mischief in East and Northeast Asia. But once again, this is a historical development of significant proportion, and it's something that I think needs to be treasured. And as America and the Republic of Korea look at their own politics and look at future elections, one of the most important things that I hope the two countries will do will be to preserve and grow this regardless of the outcomes of their respective political processes.
All right, I see your point, Mr. Revere. Now, I'd like to ask many more questions to our experts, but unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today's edition. Thank you, Mr. Revere, for your time and insights.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Go, for your time and insights as well. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with more in-depth stories. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.